Then this is Honda FRV 2005 2.2 turbo diesel, bearing access for the bearings on the hub. I needed to change them. Now, as always when I do my videos, because I'm not a qualified mechanic, I just get stuck in and get on with it, save some money, and then just put it back together the way I took it apart. So yeah, just bear that in mind if you're doing it yourself, just to take precautions. And yeah, all the best basically. First of all, what I had to do was loosen up the wheel nuts on the wheel, jack it up, take the wheel off obviously, and then what you are faced with is would have been that way, the hub, which I have here. Now you have the drive shaft that goes in there, which is that. You have a hole here which has a bolt on the bottom there, a nut, sorry, which is, where's he gone? Which is that one. It also has a little clip in it which goes through and round here, and he also goes through the hole on this part here, which is actually what goes into that hole there. And then you've got the two holes here, there, which go into the suspension arm. So all in all, it'd have been up like that. Okay, now there is a castle nut. Yeah, sorry about that noise. Just got a message. There's a castle nut that goes on the end here, and would go there. Okay, and that would poke through here, and that would be on there and screwed on. There is a little crease where the yellow marker is, which is folded down into a groove on this drive shaft. Now I've had to grind this drive shaft right back, because when smacking it to get it out of here, I've ended up reshaping and bending over and mullering it basically. So I've grounded it off, sorry, proper English, and had to put some extra threads back in there because I'd lost some. Okay, so that's that. And then you've got these ones that go into there, which go through them, and it's a 19 one side and a 22mm the other side, so they come off. Well, you've got to just start by loosening everything first. I loosened up the castle nut that went there. Then there's the disc pad, sorry, the brake disc, which has two locating screws, which are these little ones here. They were 1, 2. I loosened the castle nut, loosened them. I then loosened these. I also loosened the caliper, which would have been sat on the back of there. Okay, I loosened all the nuts on the caliper as well, including the brake brake fluid line. And what I've done is I've put some bits of timber either side of it and clamped it off with a pair of mole grips, just so it doesn't come out. You lose some fluid, as you would do, because at the back of the piston where that attaches, that fluid came out. There is also your ABS sensor, which is a trailing cable which goes to that bit there. Take that off here. Okay, now it is connected by a series of little fold over clips, and you'll have to go along each one, unbending them, prying them up with a flathead screwdriver, which is what I used, just a flathead, and get that out. Okay, so take that off, get everything loose first. You might want some WD-40 to get things moving, because this one was quite tough. I did the other side and it was nowhere near as hard as this side. And what I did find is when hitting the bottom of this one to get him out of there, and hitting the front of this today, I found out I absolutely mullered it, as I've said. But on the other side I mullered this one, but it weren't as bad as what I've done to that. So just bear in mind, you might want a sacrificial bit of wood to try and use to hold underneath on it as you hit it, or on the front of that as you're hitting it out. Either way, it can be a tough job. I did have to jack up right under here to this piece to force the wishbone up and the suspension up. I reattached it here, send the whole system up, so that all this wants to do is go down away from this. And so I was hitting here with my lump hammer and giving it hell, and eventually it went, and then obviously I smacked that out, took it out of there, and the whole thing come away. So all the caliper was off. I've actually got the caliper in soak. I've took that apart so that it can be serviced and re-lubricated and cleaned, because it was a bit of a mess. Trying to think of anything else. If you do end up wrecking any of this here or this one, just send me a message and I can talk you through what I had to do. I kind of grounded it down so that it was flush as best as possible. It was literally like that fat. It was overhanging. It weren't even going to go through there. Wasn't even going to go through this, so I had to get it back on, push it back on, and then just take it down, and then just go through the threads with a little hacksaw. I've also got an air-powered little disc cutter and then a proper grinder there, and it just shaped it back enough to get the new one that come with my new bearings, because the bearings come with a new castle nut and a new clip to go inside here. The other side, it came with it, so that was nice, and it goes on lovely. So I just hope it's enough. Right, that's that. And then obviously it's everything in reverse. Took my brake pads out. If you've done brake pads and discs before, then that doesn't need any explanation, but I took them out. I'll grease the back of them before I put them back in. I used 13mm, 12mm, 19, a 22, I think a 17 as well on the calipers. Like I say, get everything loosened up before you start taking certain things out. I just loosened all this up, all of those up. Loosen the castle nut on the end of there, the little nut underneath there, which is another castle nut. I think they're called that because they look like little flipping castles. Like that one there. And again, there is that clip that you have to pry out of. It goes in there when the nut's on. Okay, so you'll have to figure out how to worm that out. I'm not a professional mechanic, as I've said, if I haven't already said it, so it's just a case of trial and error. I just crack on with it and get on with it, you know. Here's the caliper. If you're not interested in watching the caliper side of things, because I've took it apart, I'm going to clean it and service it so that it works better, then you may as well turn the video off now. If you've got any questions, then don't hesitate to send me a message, and we'll go from there. So here is the caliper side of things. Taken apart, this is what I was talking about, loosening up on the back of the caliper. You have these nuts which have these rubber grommets. This piston has the grommet on there. Okay, he goes in there. I think that grommet goes the other way, but and then that will go through. This nut will end, he's on the other side of this, so he's like that. Okay, so it's like that. While the caliper's on, loosen these. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to hold the caliper while getting these undone, and they can be quite tough. So loosen them while the caliper's still attached by these ones here. Sorry, while they fix to the hub, while it's all attached by them. Loosen that one up, and also your fluid line. Loosen all them up. If, when you come to get the castle nut off as well, I'll quickly say, obviously the castle nut on the hub, the car's going to want to, the hub's going to want to turn, so either put it in gear or leave your caliper on and stick that as flathead screwdriver straight into there, like so, on your disc. And then as you're trying to undo your castle nut, that'll bite onto the caliper and it won't turn. You can put it into gear so that it doesn't turn, but I don't know whether that'll do any damage or not to the gearbox. I wouldn't have thought so, because when your car's on a hill and it's been left in gear, obviously your handbrake's on, But if it weren't, you can leave it there in gear and it won't roll away. And that's all got a weight of the car behind it, but then again, I could be wrong. So, back to it. Again, all these coming apart, the rubber grommets just come off. I've sat them in soaking thinners, along with all the shims, because the shims were caked in paint. I painted it to try and look after them and make them look a bit better. But I think I'd put so much paint on them that I'd ended up affecting the job that the shims meant to perform. And I think some brakes were binding, so I'm just going to go through it all, strip it all down. Now I have took the piston out. To get to the piston, which is in there, I've put that metal bar where the fluid line goes, hit it with a lump hammer, knocked him all the way out. There's a rubber grommet there, which sits in the groove. It's a bit rusty on that one side, so I'm not going to take him all the way out in case I can't get him in, but I'm just going to soak him, clean him, and clean the side of the piston, get rid of all this that's corroded, so he slides in and out of there better. Now getting him back in, you're going to need a couple of sockets or one big socket, because you're going to want him there going down evenly all at the same time. Use a bit of lubrication. WD-40 was fine, but what you got to make sure is that when you're getting him back in there, that this rubber grommet goes round the piston first, which you may need to use a flathead screwdriver just to pry him round one side. You can get one in, but then you need to use a flathead to just pry the rest of it round. Otherwise, as you're banging that in, it's going to take the rubber seal in with it and absolutely muller it, and so you don't want that. So once that's in, the other end of the grommet, this rubber bit, that bit there, will fit in this crease here. So just make sure it's all in place and that it's all moving freely. Even after I'd cleaned it and put it back in, I was tapping the piston forward, not all the way out, tapping it forward with that from behind, again back behind here in the hole, and then I was knocking the piston back down with the ratchet sockets that I was using to knock it in with, just to get it moving backwards and forwards, so that the lubrication get all the way around. And then that was it really. I put it all back together after I'd painted the parts separately, stripped all the bits that needed stripping, lubricated these up again, took all the grease off of them, cleaned out the holes here with as best as possible with some cotton buds, and just re-greased in there, re-greased these, re-greased in there, greased the shims so they can do their job properly, and basically put it all back together. At the end of this, when you put in all your hub back on and you've had your bearings put back in, because obviously to get your bearings into your hub, you're going to need them pressed out and then going to need them pressed back in. So I'm going to run down the garage and they'll do that for me down there, to get this bit of these bearings out, and this hub plate here, that'll come out and the bearings will be removed. That'll all get pushed back in. Make sure at the end of it all you remember to bleed off your brake system. You want to undo your bleed nipple on your caliper, get someone to pump the brake to push a bit of the fluid out, and then leave the brake down while you do the caliper back up, the bleed nipple back up, sorry, so that there's no air in the system, so that when you drive off your brakes aren't going to be all spongy on you. Pump it a few times, make sure it's solid, don't drive anywhere until them brakes are back to normal, otherwise you're going to have issues. I found that out the hard way. Didn't damage anything, but my car rolled a little bit further than I'd liked after pressing the brake. Again, putting it all back together with this area, it's a bit of a tough one. It's a jiggle and a juggle. You're going to have to push the wishbone down, you're going to have to get the you really have to push on this part of the hub to get this bit to fit into place in there. It kind of slots up and under and up, and then get these in. I had to use a flathead screwdriver on the other one to kind of jiggle it round, go through here, lift it up so I could then get one of these ones in, and then I could get the next one in after. Just a bit of manual labour getting involved, you know what I mean? So that's it. Any questions, don't hesitate to message me. I hope this has been as advisable as possible. I know it's a bit backwards, most of my videos are, because I decided to do the video after I've done the job, just so that I can make sure I know I've done it all right. So yeah, there we go.